event. Special welcome, of course, to our speaker, Helga Stellmacher, who is the director of the British Council in Germany. And as it's quite a rare occasion to have members of our own board here in these sessions, I do want to welcome Anne-Ruth Herkens, who recently joined the board of Deutsch-Britische Gesellschaft. 90 years of British Council, that's quite a long time, and British Council has had a very proud history trying to spread the word on Britain in European, non-European countries, in the Southern Hemisphere, in the Americas, everywhere. And Helga Stellmacher has been very much involved now for quite a long time. She's had a career in the British Council. She's served in South America, in Europe, in Central and South Asia, and in the Middle East. So now in Germany, this is a great occasion to welcome her here and to invite her to talk about peace and prosperity and the power of cultural relations. She will be referring very shortly to a man who died quite recently, Joseph Nye, who coined the phrase of soft power. And it is indeed soft power, the power of cultural relations, that has done quite a lot to bring people together, to bring nations together that perhaps otherwise would not be talking to each other. So we're very interested to hear what Helga, as the representative of the British Council here, will tell us about these cultural relations. Obviously, being in Germany, these relations have become much more important due to Brexit and due to the changing geopolitical landscape we're living in. So it's really a great moment to have her with us. And so without further ado, Helga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rupert. Thank you, Mary, for the invitation to come and speak. I assume you let me know if there's any problems with the audio. So yeah, it's great to have this opportunity. I'm kind of using a base of a talk that I did in February. I was invited to 4 Deutsch-Britische Gesellschafts in the in NRW, and so if any of you are on the line, there'll be a lot of repetition of what I might be covering. But yes, so and thank you to everybody for joining on this very sunny evening, as I understand that I'm competing with, as we just said, some nice parks and beer gardens out there. So thank you for being with us. What do I want to do in the next 45 minutes is really to try and explain what we do, why we do it, and very much what we're doing in Germany. So it's quite a lot to pack in there, and it's always hard to know where to pitch it. So yeah, do jump in and ask questions if I'm not if I'm assuming prior knowledge, for example. As Rupert alluded to, I've been with the British Council for a long time. I think I'm coming up to 27 years. And yes, over that time, I have seen the British Council's work from many, many different aspects. I joined as an academic manager in the teaching center part of our organization in Venezuela many moons ago. I think I applied for a role in Hong Kong, and they sent me to Caracas. That was the start. And from there, I jumped into our examinations, assessment business. I ended up, being the director for Europe for our assessment business. And then I jumped over to what we call the grant funded side. And I led our English and education programs in South Asia, which was a fantastic role. And then I got into the world of being country director, which again is, I would say it's probably the best job in the world. You get to kind of you know, have that umbrella view of all of our work and get to represent what we do and look for opportunities. So I did that prior to here in Thailand, and then happily landed here in Germany. And I'll just clear up the name reference as well. So very German name. I'm not the first country director in Germany as a woman. I'm not, you know, many first, but I'm probably the first country director who has the most German name. And the story behind that is that my father is German, and he came over from East Germany just before the wall came up in Berlin, I believe, and he went to the UK. He met my mum, had kids, the three of us, and never spoke German to us. So yeah, I have this German name, but and as people would, you know, naturally assume that I'm a fluent German speaker, unfortunately not the case. Kind of an intermediate level, but trying to get better. But obviously I do have, you know, a lot of roots here, and it's been fantastic to be able to really dive into that side of my family history, being here. So it's a fantastic opportunity. What am I going to do over the next 40 minutes? I'm going to do a little bit of our history as an organization. I'm going to do a little bit of our mission and our remit, a little bit on the why we do what we do, but most of it, as I said earlier, will be what elements of our work in Germany are most prevalent at the moment. And that I really want to do that because the more I speak to people from different sectors, I often get the, wow, I didn't know you did that comment. So that's my aim, is that you go away knowing something about the British Council that you didn't know before. So we are the UK's International Organisation for Cultural Relations. And yeah, as Rupert just mentioned, that cultural relations is often synonymous with soft power. And so, yeah, I'm not going to go deep into this. Put this on. Yeah. As he just mentioned, the late, great Joseph Nye, who died, unfortunately, last week, was the first person to coin the phrase soft power back in the 80s. He was a political scientist, a professor at Harvard. And we were just saying, it seems kind of strange that we never had this prior to that. But his definition was, yeah, the one we know very much, the point that you are not forcing people to do something, you're not using hard power, guns, military, or just ordering people. You are actually using attraction to get people to value your country's assets in this case. And our definition, we kind of came up with our own definition there but very much the same thing, but how we channel that soft power is definitely through making that international connection and the exchange that happens. And that's really where the magic happens, I think, where the two countries, I was in this case, UK and Germany, but UK and all the countries we work in is, I think, really where that comes to life. And for me, the two main, I think, words, if I had to sum it up, would be generating trust between the two sides, and very much mutuality. You know, you can't make somebody like you, you can't, you know, as we've just said. And so there always will and has to be something in it for both sides. And I truly, truly believe, you know, that works beautifully when we get it right. So a little bit of the history. So we were founded, as we just said, the 90 years we just had in December last year. So we were founded in 1934, and that was against the backdrop of the Great Depression of the 1930s. So following the big Wall Street crash in 1929, and you know, which led to huge kind of dips in international trade, unemployment rising, living standards dropping. There was a consequent rise in extremist views, politically and otherwise. And it was felt that, yes, that we needed to revive this need for better understanding to try to counter some of those more extremist views and to build that trust that I've just mentioned. Back then, we were born as the British Committee for Relations with Other Countries. Quite long, but at least it kind of says what it does on the tin. It kind of describes that our role. And so in 1934, we began life in the UK. And then we had our two first overseas offices were opened in 1938. Any ideas, if you want to put something in the chat, of where you think those might have been? I'll give you a clue that one of them was in Europe and the other one not. Let's see if I can see the chat. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously easier to shout out, but I don't think we're going to do that. So, okay, I will announce that, yes, the two overseas offices were in Egypt and in Portugal. And then followed by a lot of the Eastern European countries followed quite quickly. We were set up in Poland, etc. Not long afterwards. In 1940, we were incorporated in a royal charter, and interestingly, our remit was described as fostering friendly knowledge and understanding. And as I'll show you in a minute, our remit really has not changed in its essence over the last 90 years. Just before I jump onto that, this is a photograph of what were called these allied centres. Interestingly, we had these across the UK. This one is in Liverpool. I don't know if there's anything to indicate this is Liverpool on the photograph, which existed from 1941 to 1946. And essentially, this was a centre which did English language teaching, right? Because we don't do that face-to-face in the UK, and we haven't done possibly since back then, but also for cultural exchange. So these centres were very often frequented and quite havens for refugees coming into the UK at the time. So on to, I just mentioned friendly knowledge and understanding, and this is now how we talk about our main core purpose, which is not dissimilar to that, but we could talk about building connections, understanding, and trust, but essentially the same thing as friendly knowledge and understanding, as I said, between the people in the UK and the countries where we work, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we believe by doing that, at the top of that kind of theory of change, that we believe that our work does contribute to a more peaceful and prosperous world. So on the security side, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and on growth. But yeah, again, is perhaps often an indirect consequence of our work. So just before we jump into that, how do we work? Some of the features, I would say, of the British Council. We are an arm's length body of the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office. And that brings kind of, you could say, some paradoxes perhaps I think one of our main advantages is we are independent of government in that sense. We are neutral, we're apolitical, we don't get involved on those, political levels. We're there, through many different governments, both on the UK side and on the local side. And yet, of course, we have to show that we are aligning, to a certain extent with government priorities. So yes, and because they're normally quite wide, it's not normally that difficult. I think the other thing is that we are, and as you can see from the 90 years, I think we have gained a lot of credibility over the years because we are there for the long term, and yet our funding cycles have to, because we get the funding, we get part of our funding from the government, that those are more short term. So we're just waiting now for the comprehensive spending review to know what we'll get for the next 3 years. We had a 1-year settlement. So yes, while we can commit, and as I said, we're normally in countries for the duration, sometimes the funding cycles are a bit difficult to manage. Our patron was Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and now we're really delighted that King Charles III has taken over that patronage. So we have two sides essentially to the British Council. We have a grant funded side and we have a commercial side. And the good news is that we leverage the grant enormously. So the grant actually only represents about 15% of our income, or certainly pre-COVID. And the commercial side of our work, which is essentially the teaching centres and examinations that we deliver, brings in around 85%. So we're kind of leveraging, for every pound we get from the government, we bring in around 5. And that can be seen as, you know, essentially we are, creating soft power and cultural relations for very, very good value. A lot of our centres are, you know, based on big teaching centres. So our physical presence is often very much a consequence of our successful businesses. And I just mentioned the one last thing. I think we are very well known for our expertise, and that is at the core of, I think, of our USP here, that and the exchange of expertise. So one of our kind of mottos is that we share the best of the UK to the world, and that we learn from the best around the world. So it's that constant exchange of expertise from the UK and in the countries we work. Moving on, yeah, this might not work again, but there are some numbers here. And the question is, do you know what they might refer to? We can start, they're obviously all about the British Council globally. Any takers for any of them? You could pop it in the chat if you think you might know. We could start with the smaller ones first, or the bigger, whatever you might think you know. Anything related to, yes, Lucas, one is the number of employees, but which one? It's not 600 million, you might imagine. It is 9,000. That's the number of employees we have. Any other? Yes, indeed. Sorry, I don't have prizes on the phone, but any other ideas on the numbers? Yes, that might have been a Google search there, but sorry, no, actually, it's not. It's almost there. We operate physically with physical premises in 100 countries, and the 200 is actually where we deliver programs. So we often, when I was in Thailand, I was also responsible for our programs in Cambodia, Laos, and Brunei. And yet we did not have physical offices in those countries. So we often deliver in countries where we don't have those premises. So that's quite a lot soaked up there. I think we've just got the bigger ones. So I will put you out of your misery. 150 million are the number of people, the number of beneficiaries, you could say, who directly benefited from a British Council intervention experience. So this would be people who took exams, took a teaching course, or participated in our grant programs. That's worldwide, and I think that was last financial year, 24, 25. Oh, it could be 23, 24. And the 600 million are the number of people who experienced our services online. So that's the bigger one. So we've got a huge estate of certainly English resources that are massively used, and that boosts the numbers there. But we are trying to do more and more digitally as we go. I think that's all. So I think we've covered a lot of this, where we work, what we do. The other thing to mention is that, and having been in the organization a long time, this is the clearest way we have organized ourselves, is to have, we have 3 pillars. So on the top right there, we work in arts and culture, education, and English. And that, you know, really helps, I think, to focus the mind when you think about what does the British Council do. I'll get into it when we talk about Germany, but English is split between grant-funded English work we do with governments and the commercial businesses I just talked about, the teaching centres and the exams. And the why, and I think in the middle section, this is kind of portraying that the mutuality that we kind of serve the UK, obviously, and supporting the international outreach of all 4 nations of the UK in the sectors that we work in. But likewise, we also want to deliver benefit and opportunities for the people in the countries where we are working. And we work at all of those different levels. So it's a national government levels, sectors, institutions and individuals. And the aim is always, I think, to see how we can create most impact. How can we really make the deepest or the widest impact? So trying to be as systemic as possible. And also, I think heavy on the agenda for our grant-funded work is how can we be sustainable in the sense that we can do an intervention, we can step back, and that initiative or that change can continue without us. I have a very brief video. I'm not sure if the audio doesn't work, we can skip it. I should have tried this before, actually. But this is just giving you a flavor of our work around the world. So let me know if you can't hear the audio.
At the British Council, connections have always been at the heart of what we do. From a very first English class, to supporting high quality and inclusive education for all. Building partnerships to share expertise. Creating opportunities to learn and thrive. With the qualifications that transform lives. From creative collaborations that spark imagination and innovation. Sharing arts and culture with new audiences around the world. Breaking down barriers. Opening conversations. To help tackle the global challenges facing us all and supporting young people with the skills they need. Connecting the UK to the world. Working together, we can achieve so much more than we can alone. Building connections, understanding, and trust for a more peaceful and prosperous world.
I'll stop it there. So yeah, that was just to give you a flavor, I think, of the different sectors that I've talked about and the many different countries where we do that work. I'm now going to jump on to the Germany part, which, as I said, is what I really want to get across. So in Germany, some facts, figures for you. I don't know if anybody recognizes the picture in the slide. That is, for those of you based in Berlin, that is where we used to be until 2008. I did actually visit when we were still there in Hackersmarkt. We had that fantastic 6-story building, I think it was, with library, with and very big teams. Over time, the non-ODA grants have reduced quite significantly. And we used to have 5 centers across Germany. At one point, we now just have the one center, as mentioned here, in Alexanderplatz, but still it's a great central location where we are. So we were founded not in 1934 or even, you know, near to that, but in 1959. And that was on the back of what I'll talk about a little bit later, the Cultural Commission, which was a kind of government-to-government forum that was set up in 1958 to discuss, as you could imagine, cultural connections between the two countries. And then I think a year or 2 years later, the Goethe Institute was set up in the UK. So it was kind of a bilateral agreement. We currently have 40 staff. They're not all working on Germany. We have some global, some regional colleagues who are based here, but the majority are, and the majority of those staff would be working on our examinations business. In our British Council categorization, Germany is the highest level priority. So yeah, in Europe, along with France, Germany, and a couple of others, we are the highest, and that does kind of determine the funding that we get, and so Germany is absolutely top priority for the British Council. What I guess when I came in, and I think this is the role of all country directors, is okay, what can we make a difference? And particularly, I think coming from my previous postings were in the older world, where you've got much bigger budgets, much bigger teams. This seemed a bit of a dilemma, that we have smaller teams and smaller budgets, program budgets, and yet it's super important. You know, Germany to the UK is super important. So how do we make that work? And I think the added complication here has been the 16 Bundesländer, whilst a great thing, but I'm used to being able to walk into one Ministry of Education or Culture and we talk about doing something perhaps at a national level. So that's another kind of, you know, dilemma, I guess, is how can we really make an impact in a positive way across the country? And I think the answers that we're coming to is that we do have to work quite thematically. I mean, the great thing is that there's so much happening between the UK and Germany already. I mean, the Deutsch-Britische Gesellschaft is a fantastic example of that. And there are many, many examples of great partnerships that have been going for years. And you know, the feeling is, despite Brexit, still extremely, you know, warm and positive, and that's fantastic. So we've been really trying to think hard about, okay, what's not covered? What are the areas that perhaps, you know, we can fill or try to build connections where there aren't. So at the moment, we're just working through some thematics around, obviously mobility comes up a lot, and that whilst, you know, obviously we can't influence the actual mechanics of the mobility, that's with the Home Office, you know, obviously we're trying to do what we can to make sure that mobility, whether it's virtual, whether it's face-to-face, can and will continue to happen. We're also, EDI, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, is a big strand that we're looking at, and particularly around those areas of social cohesion and inclusion, as well as the kind of areas of disability that you might have seen on that video. The other area we're exploring is, you know, I think both countries have, as many countries in this part of the world, aging populations, and this whole skills deficit that is coming down the line, and how can we perhaps bring the right people together to solve some of those issues. So it's just a you know, a kind of flavor of some of the areas that we're looking at. I would also say that situation I described also influences our ways of working. So just to emphasize that we are usually working in partnership, and that's a great thing. And you know, that can be either, you know, so we can both co-fund something, but often it's in kind and we're just using each other's networks, and that's a very favored way of working. We try to do as much as we can digitally. Obviously doing a webinar for, you know, all German universities, UK universities, you can get much wider reach for our resources. And we do a lot of insights work, the research that we can then use as a platform to bring people together to discuss, and, you know, policy dialogues or otherwise, and try to get that influence at the policy level. So this is not completely different from what we've just seen. So this is our kind of mission statement here, that we aim to strengthen those existing and create new relationships. across Germany where it matters. Those are our 3 key pillar areas. And the arrow at the bottom, these are our 2 cross-cutting themes. So whether it's in whichever sector, we try to build in elements of equality, diversity, inclusion, as I mentioned, but also sustainability and the climate change area. So very quickly, I know we at the half hour, I'm just going to delve into each of these sectors and give you a flavour of what we're doing at the moment in Germany, just the main programmes. So in arts and culture, we have a new head of arts. I don't know if you may have known our previous head of arts, Helga, who retired after a fantastic long service and was awarded an MBE recently for her service. And we have a new head of arts called Susanne Jaschko, who has a background in the kind of technology and arts, digital side, which is fantastic, and I think is taking us in some of these new directions. So, I mean, I think the first thing to say is that perhaps unlike some of the cultural institutes connected to the embassies, we don't promote the traditional. We don't promote the traditional, and we don't promote kind of famous, well-known people, because they can do that themselves. So our remit is very much about supporting up-and-coming artists and making those connections between institutions to create new things. It's very much about that. So these are the 3 thematic areas that we have, these global program strands. And so we have chosen these 3 out of a number. So we focus a lot on the creative economy. I can talk about some examples of that in a minute. We have a strand which we really like, which is using culture to respond to these big global challenges, like I said, EDI, sustainability. And then we have this Culture Connect, where we're always trying to bring together artists and institutions to exchange, as I said. So it's all about innovation, looking forward, and trying to make a difference and a change. I've just highlighted here 4 of our arts programs. Again, if you've been following the British Council in Germany, you will probably know of the British Council Literature Seminar, because it's been going since 1986. And back then, I think it was a very small, intimate type of seminar. We had people like Salman Rushdie and others who were unknown at the time in I think some type of monastery setting where people would really hold up for a few days and get to know the artist and exchange. Obviously, it's morphed a little bit since then, but the one we just held in last year in November was bringing over 5 of these really exciting young authors. They won the Granta magazine's best young authors, young British novelists is the title, and that only happens once every 10 years. And they were they're really doing very, very different types of work, and it was chaired by Helen Oyeyumi. I don't know if you know her work, but she's very influential and innovative. And so we had 100 kind of experts who came to that seminar, 3-day seminar. But this year we live streamed a lot of the sessions and recordings, which have now reached about 10,000. So we're trying to iterate and evolve that as we go. Arts and inclusion, I'll just mention we had a very successful seminar in March, not last month, but where we brought together the 3 big visual arts German arts associations to discuss how is access, how art is everybody dealing with, in this case, inclusion, disability, and we brought over some UK equivalents to share that, and that is something we'll be sending out some videos and some takeaways from that. Creative tech, we're really excited about. We did a piece of research last year, which has just been finalized, where we were mapping where the creative technology hubs in Germany are. And they've also been done by typology. Some do outreach work, etc. And with that, we also had an angle of how inclusive these creative tech hubs are. And we've just published the research, and we have a launch event at Republica at the end of this month, and where we'll be bringing together UK and German experts to again, we'd really love to connect people, because again, we think that, you know, together they could be creating even better things. And finally, Cultural Bridge, now in its 4th year, is a fantastic flagship program, bilateral program for us. Just jump onto the next slide to give you some visuals. So one of the beautiful things is that these people on the left bottom side, we all co-fund this. So all of the 4 arts councils of the UK, I think it's the only program perhaps that all of them buy into and co-fund. But it started with ourselves. My predecessor, Paul Smith, set this up with the Fonds Soziokultur in Germany. And we also collaborate with the Goethe Institute in London. And basically we are connecting socially engaged arts practices in German and UK towns. So it's quite grassroots, it's quite and basically the grants that we give out are, and this is quite unusual for a grant scheme, they don't have to produce anything. The money is to get together. There's normally one visit each way, and just to understand what the other community are doing with their socially engaged arts practice. So it covers lots of different art forms, and sometimes they don't share the same art form, but they're trying to do, you know, the same type of work. And over the 4 years, I think the numbers have actually gone up because we just had a funding round. Yeah, we funded 49 partnerships across that time, and in a huge variety of ways that, yeah, as I said, are benefiting communities, often involving disability, LGBTQ, and again, it's about social cohesion, it's about acceptance, it's about all of those things. And the 2 sides coming together really make this a really amazing program. Jumping on to education, most of our work here in Germany is around tertiary education, and it kind of spans those areas. So we do a lot on the student mobility side of trying to let people know about Study UK, particularly obviously post-Brexit. Navigating that became more difficult. The Going Global side is about creating partnerships between universities, and a new area that we moved into just in the last couple of years is building a community of UK alumni. So let me just go into those a little bit more. One of the programs that comes into the Going Global bucket is a recent program. It's just in its 2nd year, called Springboard, and we give out grants for, and this was the impetus for this was getting back into Horizon, which was fantastic news for us. And we thought, okay, let's kickstart a little bit. So we give out, again, small grants around £10,000 for research teams in the UK and Germany to get together and discuss how they can build a bid for the bigger funding pots. So the big ones from Horizon, from the DFG, from the UK research councils. And this has been hugely popular. And we also, there's a strand where there has to be development angles for early career researchers. So as I said, this year was our 2nd year, and our 3rd year we'll be announcing the grant calls in the summer, in June, July. We do a lot of policy dialogues. You might know of the Queen's Lecture, which has been going for, this was a gift from Queen Elizabeth to Berlin. And it will be 60 years that we've been doing that in this year, actually in 2025. So we'll be doing something quite special. And that, in the most recent years, we do that in partnership with the British Embassy, and it's with the TU, the Technical University in Berlin. So we bring over an eminent scientist, expert in their field, who speaks at the large auditorium, and we live stream that to thousands of people. And IDE is another example of that. I mentioned we support parents, students to understand more about how to study in the UK, and the Alumni UK. And the Alumni UK, we started from scratch. So the definition of Alumni UK are those people who studied in the UK physically for Germans or people back in Germany for at least 1 year, I think. And so we started trying to kind of surface where these people were. So we went through the universities and their alumni associations. And I think in the last couple of years, we've had 4 or 5 physical meetings in different parts of Germany. And I've just been completely knocked out by the yeah, the depth of feeling that's there. These people are doing amazing things, and how much that UK university experience, whether it was, you know, the way of teaching or the life that they experienced, made a real difference to them and changed lots of things, and it's fantastic. So I think we're gathering speed. There's actually a website, a platform that we run as the British Council globally called Alumni UK. And between that and our own databases, we have around 900, I think, Alumni UK, but we're going to continue to build that. And we're just finding out what they want, you know, how can we add value as we go forwards. And lastly, as I mentioned, we do a lot of research and insights, and we're just doing a piece now around transnational education. Whilst the numbers of face-to-face undergraduate, postgraduate went down, understandably, through Brexit, what has been growing is transnational. So this could be online degrees with the UK, it could be franchising, it could be double degrees. So we're just doing a bit of research to find out where is it growing, which types of education are growing, and so we can again release that and see where we can go with it. UK German Connection, or UKGC, as sometimes we abbreviate it. This, I'm quite surprised how many people don't know about this, but this is a program funded by the Department for Education, the British Council, the Auswärtiges Amt, and here's the other funder. Anyway, it's now funding to around £500,000 a year, and this is to promote and support exchange between young people from the UK and Germany. So they try to support with, you know, ideas for projects that UK and German schools can do. It's also for non-formal education, so for youth institutions. They have some funding for getting together. Obviously, we can't get over the visa issues, all of that, as I said, but it's a great resource. And if you don't know about it, you know, I can definitely have a look on our website. I think more people need to know about it, and it's something that we are aiming to grow as we go. It's run by the PAD and the IAB on the German side, and the British Council run it on the UK side, and we're really trying to grow this. And English language assistance, unfortunately, with the demise of German going down and down in the UK, but we're doing a lot of effort to try and get that modern languages message back there. We have currently about 180 English language assistants from the UK go to Germany, and 100 from Germany go to the UK. But those numbers are, a lot depleted in recent years. The last area is English. So this is our grant-funded work here. We basically support English teacher training in the Bundesländer, and obviously teacher training is very, you know, good here. It's very well resourced, and the quality is very high. So what we do is kind of more niche things, like we bring over UK experts to think about how you can integrate the Sustainable Development Goals into their teaching, for example, or creativity in the classroom. We have a performance poet who will be coming over in a few weeks, and how to create a bit more creativity into the literature side of things through things like that. But last year we worked with 5 Bundesländer and around 200 teachers, and every year we work with different Bundesländer, and we have a very big online digital offer both for teachers and for learners of English, as I mentioned. Things we're quite excited about this year, the middle one I'll just touch on, I'm conscious of time. We're just commissioning research at the moment on, it says equity in language education. Essentially, it's about the impact of new arrivals into the German education system, and particularly how that works out in classrooms, multilingual classroom. And what I would really love that piece of research to do is not only highlight the issues, but highlight the positives of having, you know, that multilingualism in the classrooms, and what can be done with that. Also to say, we did this amazing event in March, which we haven't done before, which brought together experts in language, teaching, learning and assessment in Berlin. We had over 100 people from the UK, Germany and a few other European countries, and we've got some really great things coming out of that collaborations going forwards. Lastly, but not least, we do work in examinations, and the majority of what we do is IELTS, the examinations to get into higher education, not just in the UK, that could be for the US, etc. Interesting, a lot of our IELTS candidates are non-native Germans. There's a lot of different nationalities who come through. We also have launched our own assessments this year. We have a test called Aptis, which we're just trying to see where it would add value in the market. And of course, we help examination candidates prepare. And just to show you, this is one of the areas where we do work way across Germany. So we offer IELTS across 15 cities. And we're always very open to anybody who would want to partner with us to do more of that work. I'm conscious that, yeah, we're getting to 1847 on my thing. So I'm thinking I might stop there. I had some more slides about some research we did between the UK and Germany, but I think I will stop there, Rupert, if you think.
Well, thank you very much indeed. This has been really fascinating listening to you, and congratulations on a first, which you probably don't even realize. I've been chairing these events of probably about 150 or so over the past 15 years or so, and this has been the first time that we've had a video in in the course of the presentation. So congratulations. One thing struck me about the video: the commentator had a distinct American accent, which I thought was sort of funny.
That was actually, Rupert, that was a question I was going to ask for people to put in the chat, because when I was doing this in face-to-face events, I asked for people, can you think what accent that was? And it wasn't American, actually. Does anybody else want to have a go at which country that accent came from?
It could be Canadian or something, but no?
No. I'm just looking at the chat.
Definitely Scottish.
No. And it's not Welsh, it's the other one.
Northern Irish, or?
Yes, it's Northern Irish.
Oh, well.
It's my good friend and colleague of mine who
Oh, well.
is now director.
Well, anyway, it's UK, and that's fine. I love the bit about positioning the UK as a global English authority. That's a really strong statement. Yes. Okay, so I have a couple of questions, but we also have questions in the chat, and our regulars know that we invite people to put questions in the chat, and so I can take as many as I possibly can in the time that is left. And there's one very fascinating question which I'd like to pick up immediately. And it says, how do you see the increasing availability of AI as affecting the work and activities of the British Council and the main pillars indicated both in Germany and outside? So.
Good question. And yes, it is something we talk about a lot. I skipped over it, but we've been doing quite a bit of research into AI and language teaching, or English language teaching in our case. And interestingly, I gave an interview recently on this, that for whatever reason, language teaching is one of the areas in the world that is moving fast with AI. And our research was quite, kind of grassroots. We were talking to teachers around the world about how they are coping with it. It was a big element in the New Directions conference I mentioned that we had in Berlin. And I think our feeling is that, whilst everybody, there's a bit of panic out there that, can we keep up, certainly, in the state school systems, what are we supposed to be doing? I think the message that we certainly got from that conference and a bit through the research is that, this is another channel. It's a bit like whatever, when the video recorder came in, or the, whatever, there was a bit of, there's a Luddite, mentality that, oh my God, we're all going to be out of a job. And I think that's definitely not the case. Our research definitely shows that whilst it can have really great benefits in personalization, which is hard to do when I'm a trained teacher myself, when you have to manage lots of different levels in a class or whatever, AI is really, really good to bring those elements in. But yeah, the research we've done is definitely showing that face-to-face human contact is still very, very much needed, and that we should be questioning it all the time. I think that's the other thing that came through from the conference, from testing experts and others, that we should be leading this and not let AI kind of take you there. So we should always be thinking, is this the tool that we need? for the situation. I think on the art side, we're having some really interesting conversations about the bias. Well, we talk about that on the other on the English and assessment as well, but the bias that is really quite scary. In fact, on the language learning side, just to jump back, they were quoting in the conference that I think it's something scary, like 80% of the English language learning models that are out there are trained on white, middle-aged Americans, content that's out there on the internet. And then it's just it's a kind of a vicious circle, right? That just feeds itself, and that's what will become the norm. And similarly, in the arts, the conversation we're having is, we're not the techie people per se, that's not our strength, but what we could perhaps do in the space is try to advocate for and maybe foment getting, because the same thing happens in the art space, that you will only have the most famous, and they're often westernized, art pieces, whether it's music, whether it's visual arts, that are being, that the AI models are looking at. So it's maybe something that we can do is to bring in, less represented cultures, countries, art forms, and somehow ensure that this is a wider field that AI is picking up on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There's another question here, and that's one I wanted to raise as well. And that is, how do you compare what you do with what Goethe Institute does?
That's another interesting
differences, and perhaps you could comment.
That's a good question too. I mean, interestingly, we normally, because people do struggle with what's a cultural relations organization. So it's the easy answer is to say, yes, we do what the Goethe does. And we do. And we believe that the Goethe of all of the cultural institutes is actually probably our closest homologue. So we actually manage a corporate relationship with them that I set up every year. There's a strategic level meeting between Johannes Ebert and our CEO, Scott MacDonald, and the senior teams. And that happens once a year in the UK, once a year in Germany. And we share very openly, where we're going with strategy, what we're doing. And it's fantastic. We had some great action points coming out of this year's meeting. Having said that, in Germany, I think what we do is not just what the Goethe does, but we also cover areas that the DAAD do, and we cover areas that I mentioned, the PAD and some areas of EYAB and IFA as well. So I think in Germany it's quite a complex picture that you have various institutions, and we don't do it to the depth. We don't have the funding that the DAAD gives out or anything like that. But in terms of the people I need to be in contact with and making sure we're both looking for opportunities, it's a bit of a wider field, which is interesting.
Thank you. One other question that sort of struck me while you were talking about exchanges with artists and so on. I mean, after Brexit, this has become more tedious in a way, because artists need special permits and visas and whatnot, so have to register their instruments and things. Do you find that's a real impediment to your work, or are you coping so well that you hardly notice?
No, that's definitely something. I mean, the whole mobility, I didn't come to the slides, but we have revived. I mentioned the Cultural Commission that was set up in 1958, and that kind of fell into oblivion, you could say, kind of 30 years ago, and it was revived again by my predecessor and others. And in the cultural commissions that we had the first one in 2023 and the second one last year. The whole conversation is about mobility. Mostly it's the elephant on the middle of the table, we say, because everybody is so concerned. And as you say, the arts and the touring barriers that are there for artists is still very acute, I think. In fact, there's a live conversation with DCMS, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, about what can we do to alleviate this. We brought over a UK designer for International Design Week last year, and she had a huge sofa that looked like a hand. It was a beautiful piece, but oh my God, trying to get that over, get it out of storage, the cost was just we have to do something about it. And because interestingly we have lots of statistics on the education side. We know how many people are studying, what the drop-off were around Brexit. Partnerships, perhaps less so, but what we don't have are kind of concrete numbers for the impact on the arts side of the Brexit and the barriers to mobility. And we're just thinking about how we can cleverly do a piece of research to show that, and to show where, you know, again, a lot of what we do is lobbying. You know, we can just present to, you know, the government departments that can take those decisions, the impact on the ground of these things. And so, yes, we are definitely looking into trying to do something that gets across those difficulties.
That's what we hear sort of from everybody, really. I think it's musicians that are hit terribly, because if the bands that have to have exact lists of every screw they bring along, and if they draw up the list and they use it again next time, and one screw is missing or one screw is added, they run into problems and things. So it's quite a challenge, I think, to do this, but still we're carrying on. I can't see any more questions in the chat, I don't think. One thing that I'd like to know: how do you cope with the increasing, tensions and new situation regarding Eastern Europe? I mean, obviously you were and you still are engaged in Eastern European countries, including Ukraine, including Russia formerly, and of course a lot of that has changed. What's your sort of experience, and what's your policy on that?
I mean, we are very much still in Ukraine and delivering, you know, cultural relations work. In fact, I skipped over a slide that we managed to, for the first time ever, bring soft power into the Munich Security Conference last year, February 2024. We managed to get a panel accepted, which was led again by the Secretary General of the Goethe and our CEO, Scott MacDonald, talking about the value and the critical role of cultural relations in Ukraine. And, you know, it was really, amazing we had, you know, it's mostly hard military kind of people that come to that kind of conference, and you could see a lot of light bulbs going off, you know, that all of the work that we do has, you can talk about different stages of conflict, but, you know, the whole basis of, as I've just been showing, of this cultural relations or soft power work is to try and prevent, in the first place, people, you know, wanting to pick up arms and you know, do whatever they do. But there's certain interventions that are really useful. You know, we're supporting the schools during conflict. And then there's obviously post-conflict reconstruction that a lot of our work can assist with, particularly. But things like, you know, we wouldn't think about, you know, just the de-skilling of the museums and, you know, things that go on in the background that we're trying to. Obviously, there's a lot around cultural heritage protection. That's a big area that we work with. So no, very much we're not in Russia. We pulled out when we had to, and yeah, that's unfortunate. As I said at the beginning, we try to remain in no matter what. You know, we're in quite a few countries where, you know, we were in Afghanistan again right to the end, but we had to pull out. So unfortunately, yes, there will be situations where we can't remain on the ground.
Well, thank you very much. We seem to have come to the end of our time quite quickly, but we've really learned a lot about what British Council does, and we had a number of people from our associated and sister organizations in other places in Germany here in the audience, so I suspect that you'll get requests whether you can't do the same thing somewhere else in the country. Thank you very much for really giving us a first-hand and very detailed impression of what British Council does and what it does in Germany specifically. And we hope that you'll be able to continue your work, and that we'll all profit from the advantages. So thank you very much.
Right. Can I just plug our newsletters? I know it's there on the screen. We now have an art-specific newsletter, which is quite a new one.